Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. It's very impressive to see so many people here early on the second day morning. This tends to be the graveyard shift at conferences where people are suffering from the excesses of the night before. So thank you very much indeed for coming. It's lovely to be here. In fact, in these challenging days in the airline industry, it's actually good to be anywhere, such as the uncertainty and the tremendous level of competition that we're all facing in this most dynamic of industries. So today's topic is all about alliances. Is it a good thing for larger airlines, smaller airlines, and indeed, given some of the recent uncertainty about the alliance groupings, what does the future hold? So before I go into my comments specifically about alliances, just a few general comments in terms of setting the scene as to who we are, what we are, and where we operate from. We are, as Chairman has mentioned, the flag carrier airline of the Sultanate of Brunei, which is located on the tip of the island of Borneo, which has the largest rainforest in the world, a land area greater than the United Kingdom, in fact, occupied by rainforest, and also, in strategic terms, is very much in the heart of Southeast Asia. And these days, that's gateway to a market of some 600 million people. Some of the statistics in terms of the economy, very, very strong, as you would expect in Brunei, heavily dominated by petrochemicals, fourth largest in the region in terms of crude oil production, ninth in the world these days in terms of natural gas production. But there are challenges from an airline perspective. Our home population base is small at 400,000. And therefore, as you can see from our airline perspective, we need to externalize more and more of our business, taking traffic, growing traffic in other markets simply because we can't rely only on the growth potential of our own marketplace at Brunei. In terms of the regional marketplace, it's become very competitive in recent times. All of the traditional flag carriers are there that you would expect to see in Southeast Asia, but of course now there is a plethora of very efficient, very well-run low-cost airlines, AirAsia, Cebu Pacific, to name just two. So the competitive environment in the region has increased very dramatically, and that's not to speak at all of what's happened internationally on the long-haul markets, where, as we all know now, in the last 10 years, there's such a heavy dominance from the Middle East carriers, the big three, Qatar, Etihad, and indeed my own former employer, Emirates. So no one knows the competitive force of these airlines better than I do. And all of that market dynamics forced Royal Brunei, in the time when I joined 3 years ago, to engage in quite a large and difficult but necessary restructuring program. So basically, we cut some of our long-haul routes where we felt that we were simply going to struggle to compete on Kangaroo, and you'll see in a moment that we're now focusing on a small number of strategically important long-haul routes. We've taken a tremendous amount of cost out of the business, especially in our regional network, so that we can compete head-to-head with the likes of AirAsia and Cebu Pacific. My own background is one of managing a flag carrier in Ireland, Aer Lingus, which competed very successfully on over 80% of its routes, one of the best low-cost airlines in the world, Ryanair. Well, we're replicating that in Brunei, and the news is good. We are now much better able to compete with Cebu Pacific on the Manila route and AirAsia on Kuala Lumpur. Staff right-sizing, always a very difficult issue, especially in small communities. 25% of our staff had to be retrenched in this period of time, but I'm glad to say that was successfully negotiated and completed without any hitches. Fleet rationalization. We've now moved on, as you'll see in a moment, to become the first airline in Southeast Asia to take delivery of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, and we've got plans as well to refleet on short haul to make sure that we're operating the best possible equipment that we can to compete in every route that we operate, long haul and short haul. Airport facilities improvement. If you've been to Brunei recently, you'll have seen the new refurbished terminal, which is now about 2/3 complete, and the full facilities will be available from the end of next year. And customer focus. This has also been a very significant area of attention in recent times, and as you'll see in a moment, we are beginning now to achieve success in that area. And rebranding. The new Better Fly Royal Brunei program, which some of you around the region will have seen in recent times, is off to a terrific start and again is beginning to gain traction in all of our regional and increasingly in our international marketplaces. I talked about the route network on long haul. We've kept it very simple now. We operate daily same-time services from Brunei in one direction through Dubai and on to London, and in the other direction to Melbourne. And we're finding that by focusing on strategically important routes rather than the previous scattergun approach that we had on long haul, we are beginning to get some traction and we're beginning to develop significant loyalty in those important marketplaces. And refleeting, I mentioned just last week, in fact, we took delivery of the first 787 aircraft to join our fleet. We've got 5 coming in the next period of time. And before long, we will be offering, and in fact the first airline to do so, an exclusive, seamless 787 service all the way from London in one direction to Melbourne, Australia in the other. And that gives you, I think, a statement of the level of ambition within our organization to be able to compete with the biggest and the best when we need to. And on customer focus too, we're beginning to see results. Recently we were delighted to be awarded the Best Airline Provider Asia by the European magazine, which is part of the Thomson Reuters Group in the UK, with quite a wide distribution right across mainland Europe. That's a very important accolade for Royal Brunei at this important stage of our development, and we're very excited about that. And this was an article to go with it, promoting Brunei as an increasingly important centre of business and tourism. Some of you may know, for instance, that this year, 2013, has been very important for Brunei. It's held the chairmanship of the ASEAN Group of Nations. And we as an airline and Brunei as economy are taking full advantage of that to promote Brunei as increasingly a centre of importance for business and tourism in the region. And the Better Fly campaign, which has just been launched in recent weeks, it's off to a tremendous start, and again, really beginning to resonate now across all of the marketplaces in which we operate. So what about this alliance question, this alliance dilemma that all of us face? I should perhaps state at the start that I come from the non-aligned movement, really, in terms of alliances. Emirates, which I worked for more than 15 years, of course, is fiercely independent. And indeed, when I was at Aer Lingus, I had the distinction of taking Aer Lingus out of an alliance. We left One World. In fact, I think we're the last flag carrier to do so. That's a very difficult decision to make. Alliances have tentacles into all aspects of an airline's operations. But we felt, and I believe it was the right decision then, and I suspect it's the right decision now, that Aer Lingus would do better as an independent airline, because our voice at the decision-making table, we felt, was nowhere near strong enough. And here's some comments from a recent article, but before we go to that, this is what Groucho Marx said: "I don't care to belong to a club that accepts people like me as a member." And that's the dilemma, really, for airlines, is that you're kind of damned if you do, and you're very possibly damned if you don't get into the alliance business. And I think Groucho Marx summarized that dilemma very, very well. These are the comments that I wanted to get onto. This is a recent article from Chris Tarry, with which I wholeheartedly agree, quoted in Airline Business. He talks about this alliance dilemma. He talks about big not necessarily being better, especially if you're one of the smaller airlines in the grouping. When I was in Aer Lingus provided probably 1% of the operating capacity within One World. It gives you no say at the decision-making table. Royal Brunei is a similarly small carrier. We also would have no say. So why are you there? What's the purpose? And the second point is even more valid. You get a seat at the table, but do you have a voice? Do you have a voice? That's the challenge. This is something Chris quoted from a Star Alliance presentation, which I have to say is a very honest statement because it's exactly what I have experienced in terms of alliance interaction. He talks about membership fees combined with costs account for some 85% of the additional revenue that membership will bring. Is it worth staying on board for that balance of the 15%? Sometimes it is. We are in a very marginal business. Sometimes that extra 50% makes the difference between staying in business or not. But it is a heavy price to pay for that level of net incremental revenue after you've paid for all the costs associated with it. Chris Terry then goes on to talk about what's beginning to happen now, and you see evidence of this pretty much all over the place, that instead of talking alliances, airlines are beginning to talk more frequently now about bilateral relationships. Emirates, Qantas, British Airways, Iberia, these kinds of bilateral partnerships which are designed to create real revenue growth opportunities and real opportunities to save on costs as well. But all is not lost for small carriers. Going back to my earlier comment about you're possibly damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, this is the recent Airbus forecast that gives us a snapshot of where the industry is in 2012 and then projects it forward to 2032. And if you look at the small network and regional and affiliate categories, you might expect that both of those would have been wiped out in the next 20 years. Well, that's not what this says. It says that in 2012, small network carriers represented about 4% of the total industry activity. That's expected to continue. Similarly, regionals and affiliates will only decrease marginally from 4% to 3%. So the good news for well-run, well-managed smaller organizations is, yes, there is a future, whether you decide to have that future inside an alliance or not. And this slide, I suspect, is well known to you all. It really, from the left to the right, it highlights the vast spectrum of possible cooperation agreements that airlines can enter into. In our case at Royal Brunei, we're tending towards the left of this chart at the moment, focusing more on developing codeshare opportunities around the region. But I wouldn't rule out, as we increase our relevance in the marketplace, some form of bilateral relationship with another airline. If you can find an airline that shares the same values and the same goals, there is certainly considerable advantage to doing so. And these are a summary of the existing codeshare arrangements that we've got around the region. So you can see the strategy very much of one of building codeshare partners with the important flag carrier operations around our region and using that as a springboard for future growth and future opportunity. So what of the future then for Royal Brunei, given the difficulties and the challenges in the marketplace? Well, as you've seen in the earlier slides, right now the priority is to build the brand and build the destination of Brunei in order to improve our relevance in the industry. You know, if you're not relevant in this industry, other carriers don't want to align their interests with you. So you need to begin to exercise some influence on the marketplaces in which you operate. Then you begin to come on the radar screen of other like-minded carriers, and that, properly managed, should be the springboard to future opportunities. And that's exactly what we're focused on. For now, we will continue to build codeshare opportunities where we can find them, but as the rebranding process rolls out, as the refleeting process rolls out, as our relevance in the industry rolls out, we certainly wouldn't rule out a significant bilateral international partnership with another airline. And one of our key calling cards in that process is the refleeting process that we're doing right now. As I've mentioned, we're the first airline into the field in Southeast Asia to operate the 787, and if you'll forgive my indulgence for a moment, we've got a short 1-minute video that I think will give you a statement of where Royal Brunei wants to go to with the brand using this brand new technology. With slight apologies for the shameless advertising, you'll have to agree it's pretty impressive, isn't it? And it's pretty shameless, as my friend in the. But you know, these days you have to take every free advertising opportunity that you can. Times are incredibly tough in our industry, as we all know. And we've got Boeing in the room somewhere, so they'll be very happy. I'm not sure what view Airbus take of all of this, but we'll see. Boeing did pay for the video, yeah. And finally, as I mentioned, it's really all designed right now. Our strategy is very much one of pushing this notion of the better fly on Royal Brunei. And maybe just to finish on a slightly lighter note, you know, we do work in one of the most challenging industries in the world, where often the challenges seem insurmountable. Somebody sent me this picture recently, which I hope you can see it in all parts of the hall, but if it'll work, I'm not sure if you can see that properly, but I call this perfect balance in the face of adversity. As you can see, this poor couple, obviously things in the farming world are not too good. There's a spare wheel missing on the front, but as you can see, together, working together, they have managed to create perfect balance in the face of adversity. And I think if there was one line that summarizes very well the lives that all of us lead in this industry, it's this ongoing necessity to create perfect balance in the face of adversity. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention.
Given the impact of North Asia, particularly the Chinese market, do you have any strategic plan looking that way?
Traditionally, flag carriers will say they'll be very happy to interline with LCCs because, at the risk of sounding cynical, it'll probably end up causing difficulty for the LCCs. Interlining and the LCC model don't normally sit easily together. So we would be interested in potentially interlining, but I'm not sure the level of reciprocal interest is there from the LCCs. They tend to regard interlining as anathema because it does talk of compromising schedules and potential delays, and that is a very, very big challenge. Having said that, in Europe, things are changing. EasyJet is much more customer-focused now than they used to be. Even Michael O'Leary admitted the other week that he's got to look after his customers now, which, by historical standards is quite an astonishing revelation for Ryanair. So things are beginning to move, and I think the lines between the LCC model and the full-service model are beginning to blur. One big difference, though, between Asia and Europe on regional markets that I've noticed, there is still a very significant demand for business class on regional across Asia. That gives flag carriers like us an edge, and I think we'll continue to have that edge. In Europe, it's very different. Now it's a very much a single-class product. People don't really care whether they fly BA or EasyJet anymore. But in Asia, it's a much more status-conscious environment, as many of you will know better than I, and business class is and will remain very important. On the Chinese market, yes, it's a very important one for us. Strategically, China and Brunei are aligning now in petrochemicals. China is investing several $billions in petrochemical facilities in Brunei as we speak. We already operate to Shanghai and Hong Kong, and we have our eye on further operations into China. It is and will remain, for sure, for anyone in this region, a very, very important marketplace. And we're delighted that the bilateral relationship between China and Brunei is growing as quickly as it has.
You're not the first Irish CEO to shamelessly self-promote your airline, so it's a good thing.
But there the similarity ends, right?
Well, you come to conferences, he does.
Yes.
You mentioned this is the start of the refleeting.
Yeah.
Are you looking at a second type as well for some of the shorter, more dense markets?
We'll be going to board, I hope, before the end of this month. Because one of the things that happens very quickly in this industry is that, for instance, we've now got the 787. For the first 5 or 6 weeks, we're going to operate it around the region just to test the legs of the aircraft a little bit. Our regional customers are delighted with it. But when we go back to some of the older aircraft in the fleet, people are going to say, come on, what are you doing on short haul? So our objective is that within a couple of years, by 2015, we will be in refleeting mode on short haul. And that's a very important element in the equation, because if we allow the long haul product to get too far ahead of us on short haul, we will have a problem because of the huge competition that there is around the region. And one of the unique features about this region also compared to Europe is the LCCs provide very good customer service here. That may not always be the case in Europe, but it is the case here. So you're quite right. We do need to move on short-haul aircraft. We probably would have liked to move sooner because, as you know, right now the industry has turned on its head. It used to be that you could always get short-haul aircraft quickly and not long-haul. Now you could get a long-haul aircraft within a couple of months. You're talking about 2 years lead time at least to get short-haul aircraft. So that's a big challenge. But by 2015, we hope to be out there with an all-singing, all-dancing, completed refleeting process, long-haul and short-haul, and we need it. We need it now. That's a good question. Thank you for that.